Alright team, this is a video all about money. But it's not really about money, it's about us, it's about you, it's about me, it's about our village, it's about the things we do, the values we hold, the things we get up to, the adventures we go on, and our future. So as you watch this video, what I would love you to do, if you haven't already done so, is to download the 10 booklet, 10 celebrating 10 years since St. Mark's kind of kicked off. And you can get that on the website and just read your way through there. And it doesn't capture everything by any means, but it captures a load of what we've been able to do over the past 10 years. And that, I hope, will help you feel at the start of this little bit all about money, to feel grateful, to feel thankful, full of gratitude for all that God has done in us, around us and through us, as we remind each other every week, for the adventures we've been able to go on, for the generosity we've been able to show, for the love that we've been able to show, for the things we've tried that worked, for the things we've tried that didn't work, but we learned stuff along the way, for the challenges we've had, for the things we've been able to do, for the ways we've been able to creatively display the love of God to individuals and groups across Milton Keynes. So first thing is read that and pause here and go and do that if you need to. And I hope, as I was when I read it back, you are overwhelmed with gratitude to God, to each other, for all that St. Mark's means to us. Next up, because this is about money, and money triggers all kind of alarm bells for different ones of us for different reasons, and some of us feel like we have money, some of us feel like we don't have money, and some of us have all kinds of historical relationships with money and the church and how people have spoken about the church. I want to put a couple of how-tos at the start of this video to explain how to think about money, how not to think about money, and what I really don't mean when I talk about money, especially in the church context. Then you know where I'm coming from, and also if I accidentally say it wrong and trigger any alarm bells in your mind as you're watching this, then maybe you might give me grace and assume that I meant the right thing rather than the wrong thing, hopefully. The thing that we checked, the quest that we're on, the adventure that we care about, the thing that is deeply held as a core conviction of ours around St. Mark's is that we want to be disciples of Jesus, followers of the way. We're not bothered about building our own empire, we're bothered about following wherever Jesus calls us. To be a person who's growing in Christ-likeness, to be growing in maturity and faith, to be following Jesus is always going to be marked by a growth in generosity. Generosity of 1,000 different things. Generosity of money, generosity of time, generosity of spirit, generosity of forgiveness, generosity of patience, generosity of care and compassion, the ability to give away our skills rather than just use them for the benefit of me, myself and I all the time. To be a person of Jesus is always going to be to grow in generosity of all things. Energy, effort, time, finances, the whole deal. And to be focused more and more on other people and giving away the good stuff. That's what being a disciple of Jesus is. It's about generosity. Money is a part of it, but it's only a part of it. There is a biblical principle, you can read it throughout the Old Testament and following through, of giving first back to God and saying, God, you are the giver of all good gifts. You've given me this much and I want to give it back to you. And, you know, back in the olden days when it was at the start of the Old Testament, that pretty much just meant the grain or the cabbages or the sheep that you managed to look after in your field and grow. It just meant sacrificing some of those. It might have meant a little bit of money, but it just meant that. And that principle has grown and saying the first fruits, that let's draw a line somewhere. Let's say 10%. We'll give that back to God. We'll give thanks to God through the offering of these things, whether that's time, whether that's energy, whether it's burning up a sheep. So there's this principle of giving back the first fruits to God, and there's this principle of a tithe. Let's say somewhere around 10%, and we give that back to God. Now, you go through to the New Testament, and there's this habit, this rhythm of giving to God, and that being done by giving to the church, giving to the temple, and there's a temple tax, and there was money that you had to give. There's also this other thing going on, and we've been reading about this, where the disciples of Jesus pool their resources. Some of them have nothing, some of them have loads, and so you pool the resources together and make sure that everyone is fed. And you can, if you work really hard and sweep some bits under the sofa, you can make it sound like the Bible says what you need to do to impress God is to give 10% of your money to the local church, i.e. St. Mark's. I don't think that's what the Bible says, and I don't think that's what Jesus means. To be a follower of Jesus is to grow in generosity. A great place to be generous is hopefully around the context of the church, because hopefully the village is doing good stuff with that money. But if that's all you do, if that's all I do, then that's not a heart thing, that's a law thing. And some of Jesus' harshest words were for people who ticked the box of giving 10%. In fact, he calls out some people who give 10% of their literally everything, their kitchen spices. They're just weighing off 10% of these things and taking those to the temple as if that's any use at the temple. They're giving 10% of their money. And yet their heart wasn't generous. Their heart wasn't kind. Their heart wasn't compassionate. And they did it begrudgingly. They did it assuming that the great divine vending machine in the sky would therefore bestow upon them favour and blessing and new job opportunities and would answer their prayers with a big fat yes, because they had given 10%, and that's what it says in the Old Testament. It isn't what it says in the Bible. To grow in generosity, whether you have tons of cash, tons of time, tons of skill, or whether you feel yourself poor in all of those things, to grow in generosity and be open-handed, so that your right hand doesn't know whether your left hand is giving and assumes it isn't, and so also gives. That's the Jesus way. Now, of course, I would love the money to come into St. Mark's because I think we can do good stuff with it. But if that's all we're doing as Jesus people, then we have missed the mark. I want to encourage you to be generous disciples in 1,000 different ways, in 1,000,000 different places that I never know about. Of course, St. Mark's, I hope, is part of that. But if that's all it is, we have missed the boat and reduced God to a very, very small box. So if you hear nothing else from this, it's that keep following Jesus and be led into generosity. Next up, really important to say, giving isn't a marker of holiness. Generosity is a definer of being a disciple, but giving isn't a marker of holiness. You don't become better in your church community because you give more. You don't get more stuff from God because you give more. You're not. We haven't got a building to name after you anyway. But even if we did, we wouldn't name a pew or a bench after people who give, because giving money is one of the ways. It's not even the most impressive way. Giving of our time and our energy and our forgiveness and our compassion, they're all important. So you don't buy stuff from God with giving. Equally, you don't buy stuff from your priest with giving. You used to. You do in some places. The whole Catholic Church has a whole theological tome about this. It used to happen in the medieval times. You don't buy stuff off anybody if they're doing it right, if I'm doing it right, with money. And it's not about the amount. Jesus is really clear. Way more impressed with people who don't have anything and from that very little are able still to be generous. Way more impressed with those people than the rich fancy pants people right at the front who look like they have a truckload and give a truckload, but it didn't require them to be generous in any way. It just required them to write off a tax return or something like that. Generosity is the thing, not amount. And so before I talk more specifically about St. Mark's, I want to be really clear. If you hear me or anybody who holds my position in a church say, you got to give money, it's got to be at least 10%, and it's got to come into this local church, the box is too small. The game is bigger than that. The field is bigger than that. Be a generous person. Follow the Spirit of Jesus in the dance of joyful generosity all over the place. Of course we'll do good work, I hope, around St. Mark's with the money. But I don't want it to be that small. I want it to be bigger than that. I want us to be joyful, generous people. Final thing is, in any community of people where we start to talk about money, this is what happens. It can easily be felt as guilt-inducing or shame-enforcing. You can easily look around at everybody else and assume they're giving more money than you, or assume they're giving money and you're not, or assume that everybody knows that you're the one that isn't giving all that much, or that you're the only one that's finding life hard. There is no guilt. There is no shame. You are a member of Jesus' family if you give nothing. You're a member of Jesus' family if you give 50p. You're a member of Jesus' family if you give 50 million pounds. It doesn't matter. There's no guilt. There's no shame. There's no arm twisting. There's no favoritism. Deal? So, with all that said, let's think about the money that we have. The money that St Mark's has is all given by you, is given by me, is given by people who mostly, not exclusively, but mostly direct debit each month. And that's what comes into what we call the general pot. There is other money that St Mark's looks after that's been donated by givers to the kitchen community for St Mark's meals, that comes in through grants, that is for specific work like Sanctuary or Pray MK. And those would be into restricted funds. The pot that we're able to access for anything, the general pot, that's the pot that we hire premises out of. We buy marshmallows to toast out of. We buy fireworks to light and send up into the sky out of. We give to MK Act out of. We support street children through Toy Box with. We help support a beautiful refugee family with. We buy biscuits with. We help bring stickers and felt tips for kids stuff. We buy playmats and toys for the teeny tinies. We buy insurance out of for the van that has to drive around. We buy insurance for us as an organisation so that we're covered if anybody falls over and breaks their leg and it turns out it was my fault. So there's the cost that we all know about, the cost that we see, the Danishes, the brioche, whatever. There's the cost that we don't see or we don't think about, like the insurance and the petrol and the van and the servicing on the van and all those kind of stuff, the computers to create something that we stick out on Instagram, all that jazz. Those are the costs that we have, and the money comes in for church, for the general pot, through the giving, through the pooling of resources of us, you and I in the village. You'll know that over the past few years, things have been difficult. You'll know that because they're difficult for you as well. The cost of living has rocketed and everything seems way more expensive now. There's been some particular things that are true about St Mark's over the past couple of years, and as the trustees have watched it and looked at the trend lines, we see a couple of things. We see our costs going up. It costs more to hire venues than it used to. It costs more to buy a brioche and hot chocolate and coffee than it used to. It costs more to ensure what we do. There are more people that are relying on us than there used to be. So our costs have gone up. At the same time, the number of regular givers into the village bank account has dropped off. Some people have had to stop giving. We'll come back to that. Some people have moved away. Some people have just decided they don't want to give so much. And not only is the number of people giving, the average amount that people give has tailed off too. Some people have readjusted their finances. Some people have decided, I was only giving to the church and now I want to give to somewhere else as well. And some splitting it in two. Coupled with that, of course, is inflation rates. And so if you were giving £10 a month previously and you started that direct debit 10 years ago, well, that £10 doesn't buy anywhere near as much now as it used to when you started. So there is a whole bunch of things, exactly the same as in your personal finances, which are true within our pooled corporate finances. We got costs going up, more people relying on us, less people feeding into the sausage machine, and what we're feeding in doesn't meet what we need to give out. And maybe it's helpful to know some for instances. For instance, it costs about £120 a week to hire out the Pear Tree Centre. It costs about another, used to be 20, it's now pushing 35 a week to buy the brioche and the biscuits and the drinks that we all have each week at the Pear Tree Centre. So we're looking at like 150 quid just to gather. And that was okay-ish when 3 years ago when we had more people giving and more people turning up. Sometimes this term we've had 12 people there and we haven't covered, if we're looking at it as a business, we haven't come anywhere near covering costs that week for that event. There are other costs that we have. We give £200 a month to MK Act. We give £120 a month to Toy Box. We, as I said before, buy marshmallows to toast. Last week we all gathered at Heron's Lodge and there was food aplenty. Those are the costs of the church. So over the past year or so, the team, the trustees, the staff have done some incredible work in trying to just shrink our spending footprint. What can we spend less on? We've cut some things down, we've cut some things back, we've reduced some things, we've cancelled some subscriptions, we've changed platforms that we use, we've decided, well, we're just not going to do that anymore. We've applied for grants and all that kind of stuff in ways to kind of say, well, actually we need to cut our cloth accordingly, more and more and more, to what we actually have. So as well as us doing some things just, here and in our own homes as staff, this video is to ask if you could also join us in a couple of things. Those things are this. Number one, and I'm not saying this because I'm a vicar and I'm contractually obliged to say it. Number one is pray. Pray with thankfulness that God has done an amazing amount in us, around us, and through us over the past 10 years. Pray with thankfulness that we've lasted 10 years. You might have been here for all of that, or most of it, or a lot of it, or some of it, or hardly any of it. Doesn't matter. We lasted 10 years. Nobody thought we were going to do that. Thank God. Thank Him for His provision so far, His leading so far, His guiding so far, the fact that we've never wanted for a penny so far. Thank Him for the fact that He is generous in nature, and ask God to reveal the way forward to us and to give us everything we need, trusting that prayer does do stuff. I know many of us have a complicated relationship with prayer, but I still believe it does stuff because we're asking the God who cares, who is involved, who is able to do way and abundantly more than ever we could conceive of or ask or imagine. So number one, pray. Could you build it into your daily rhythm, even if it's like a 30 seconds? God, thanks for St. Mark's. Thanks for all the stuff around it. And I hope that God, somehow you can release money for it in the future so that it would be able to carry on. Number one, pray. Number two, could you give financially? There's all the other ways of giving and being generous. This one's about money. Could you give financially on purpose? What I mean by that is maybe you are one of those people who hasn't ever given money to St. Mark's or done it on a regular basis and it's just cash every now and again. Or maybe you've been thinking for months, years, I've got to get around to setting up a direct debit, and you've never got around to it. Now's a great moment. Whatever it is a month, it's just really helpful to know, there's 10 quid a month, there's 50 quid a month, there's 100 quid. It's coming in and we know and we can budget around that and we can plan accordingly. Maybe you set up, like I did a long time ago, a direct debit to St. Mark's, and in the meantime, maybe you've had 1,000 promotions. Maybe you earn more now than you did a decade ago. Maybe something has changed in your financial makeup, which means you could, if you wanted to, you have the ability, the wiggle room, the margin to be able to give more. Maybe there's an adjustment there you can make. Equally, if you are being crippled by debt and if you set up a direct debit and you're thinking, I haven't eaten for 3 days, but I can't tell Paul that actually I need the money back. Yes, you can stop giving to St. Mark's if it's thrown you into an unhealthy situation. But some of us will be able to give in this season. And so I'd love you to give on purpose. If you're able to give, the best, easiest way for management and for budgeting and for planning and all of that is by a direct debit. And we have a new way of doing that. We've been using a company called Stewardship from when we started. Stewardship, some of you will have a Stewardship account and you'll know it's pretty clunky as a system, but you would set up the Stewardship account, they would take the money, you would effectively give them the money, they would claim the gift aid back and they would give that to us, the money that you gave, plus the gift aid they got from the government, minus a fee, about a 3% fee. Well, we're now using a new platform called Infuse. Infuse that has way more functionality, it's a lot less clunky, and it means we can do more stuff with fundraising, with meals and stuff like that. But it also doesn't keep the fee. So just that simple action, even if you don't change the amount you're giving, but even if you just please switch over from Stewardship to Infuse, that means we just get a little bit more of the money. So could you do that on purpose? That would really help out, whether you're able to give more, even if you give the same. If you could switch to Infuse, that would be super helpful. If you're able to reconsider how much you can give, that would also be great. And of course, you can get all the links for that on the website. Way number 3, dead simple one. Ever buy stuff on Amazon? Don't buy it on amazon.co.uk, buy it on smile.amazon. You can even put a web browser or web extension on your browser for that. Make that the default thing, and that means whenever you buy something on Amazon somehow, because it's got spare money, it's not paying taxes, gives some money to the charity that you nominate. So if you nominate St. Mark's, you stick in St. Mark's MK, or you put in our charity registration number, which you can find at the bottom of our website, they'll give a little bit of money. It's not a lot, it's a few pence on every transaction, but if all of us do that and we all keep buying stuff on Amazon, then that's free money. Also, buy stuff from local bookshops. Number 4, do you know other creative solutions? Could you be generous with your thinking and help us out? Do you know somewhere where you're like, of course, we could hire that place and it's only 50p a week? Do you know a great venue for hire that I don't, and we've just never thought about. Do you know somebody who could do our accounts? Our accounts check costs about £1,000 a year. Do you know somebody who could do it a lot cheaper than that? Do you know a free place for petrol? If you do, tell me. Do you know of somewhere or somebody or something that you think, actually, we could do this? And that would be a creative way of cutting some costs and meeting and gathering together. Number 5. There you go. That's what 5 looks like. Pray again. Pray again. This is God stuff. This isn't a business. This isn't a thing where we're trying to make money. We're not trying to make a profit. It's a spiritual thing. It's a Jesus thing. And that's the joy-filled thing about it. Pray again and pray again and pray again. That God would lead us wherever God would lead us, and that God would give us everything we need in time for when we need it to be able to do what we know that He's called us to do. And so finally, I want to just speak for 2 minutes about the future of St. Mark's. Our rhythm of gathering over the next few months is going to be primarily around tables. It's going to be in homes. I want you to hear something really clearly. I think that's going to be fantastic. I'm an optimist, you know that. But I think, remember right at the start of the video, I said our chief adventure, the headline of our quest, the thing that we care most about is being disciples of Jesus and growing together as disciples of Jesus. We know, and we've been taking ever increasingly steps into ever increasingly deep water with this, that the table is a great place to do this. That talking together, children and teenagers and adults all around the same table, not always separating ourselves off, is an amazing place of growing deep relationships. We know that honesty happens whilst you're also passing ketchup and eating jacket potatoes and simple food together. We know that table is good, that circles are great, that everybody's voice is important, and we have that as a truism around St. Mark's. But well, what if we dived into that even more? What if we spent even more time in each other's homes and around tables? What if this ordinary pattern of meeting that we've been looking at for the past couple of months, that's been true of the people of Jesus since day one, where they met in each other's homes, where they broke bread with glad and sincere hearts as they ate together in different places. Sure, they met in the temple court sometimes, and then they were in and out of each other's homes and loved each other. Well, maybe if we did that, then that would be a great way to form ourselves in the way of Jesus. So we're going to be meeting primarily in homes for the conceivable future. That, honestly, is a good thing, and I think it could be even better than just pitching up at a venue each week and listening to me prattle on. That will be great. We are doing it now because we have these budgetary constraints. We wouldn't be doing it if we could carry on meeting at the Pear Tree or somewhere else. The budget constraints have forced us into creativity. Here's the important bit. We're not doing it because it's free. The constraints might have made us do something which maybe we'd have stumbled upon this idea in a couple of years' time when actually we said, we really enjoy being in each other's homes. Let's try that as a thing. This isn't a cost-cutting measure. This isn't something that we're doing because it saves cash. It does save cash. It does cost cuts. It saves cash. It does do all of those things, but that isn't the primary reason for doing it. If it turns out that it's actually worse, we don't enjoy it, it doesn't form us in the way of Jesus, it doesn't grow us as disciples, and it actually disrupts and disintegrates our community, then it'll be a terrible idea and we'll bust a gut to be able to be back together all the time. But I don't think that's what will happen around the tables. So my encouragement to you is, get around the tables. Have people around your table. Be generous with hospitality. It doesn't need to be fancy food. Jacket potato with butter on top is a meal. If you can grate cheese on it, even better. Being generous with honesty. Being generous with truth about your life. Being generous with open ears and listening to other people and sharing what you've learned on the journey around the table is an important thing. Being generous with time towards children and young people is huge. I think it's going to be good. So we'll primarily be in homes around tables, and then every 5-6 weeks we'll have a big old party together where we'll all gather. That'll be our rhythm for a little while. I've never done it before, so help me out. Help me make it better. Help me find out what works. Throw in some ideas. Lead some discussions. Make this thing hum. because chiefly above all things, we want to be followers of Jesus, who know him and his ways well, who are resilient in our faith so that when the large waves come, when the day of trial comes, we're able to stand. Still full of peace and joy in a world of turmoil and madness. Still full of generosity in a world marked out by self. That's the faith we want to create. Gang, we, as you know, pause over the summer. So please, over the summer, if you need to rewind this, and to rewind is divine, and to watch it again, do that. Read the 10 booklet. Think through what you can do. Switch over to Infuse. Reevaluate your giving. Pray about what you're able to contribute and what resources you have that you could throw into the pool that we're able to share together. Pray for the future of St. Mark's, that we're able to follow Jesus wherever Jesus leads and to do the stuff that he asks us to do with joy and generosity into the next 10 years. That's what we long for. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for trusting me with a discussion about money. Please don't feel guilty. Please don't feel shame. Please be released in generosity in 1,000 different ways. Don't give it to a cat's home, but do some good with it somewhere, with whatever you've got. And in the meantime, may you know the blessing of the presence of the joyful, generous God in your life.